Hi, I'm Rachel Shelley, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damien and Anne.
Wowzer, welcome back to another episode of You Might Know Her From with Damien and Anne. I'm your gay host, Damien.
I'm your other gay host, Anne, and this is our show where we, two gay people, two queers, we shoot the shit with each other about all the happenings in our life, the aging of our bodies that are just, rotting sacks of skin and liquid, and we interview an actress each episode, which, maybe is the highlight of the show for you, but maybe it's the talk of the sack of skin. Who knows? But thank you for coming back to visit with us. Damien, I wanted to tell you that I do indeed owe you 30 cents from last week. So I'm just going to Venmo you right now.
Who did I say was dead or alive? I forget now.
You didn't. You said Faye Dunaway was in the Rules of Attraction. And I said, I don't know if that's true or not, but I hope I'm wrong. I said no, and I owe you 30 cents. So I'm going to Venmo you right now.
Oh, thank you so much. God bless Faye Dunaway. Does she shows up in a gay sex scene? Is that right? Did you watch it?
I didn't watch it, but now, all this talk about Shannon Sossaman and Faye Dunaway makes me want to go rewatch that movie because I remember was it like NC-17? It was very risque.
It was risque, and James Van Der Beek was in it. And it was like a big deal that he was in it because he was like trying to shake off some of his teen idols, whatever persona.
Right.
Well, I have something to tell you as well, which is that you've been telling me to do it. You've been telling me to do it. You've been telling me to do it. And I finally started watching the morning show.
Thank God. Literally, it's just been me screaming into a black hole about what a strange thing that this insane show got 2 full seasons and is coming back for a third. Tell me everything.
I just have a few questions. One, is Reese Witherspoon supposed to be playing like a 30-ish year old person?
100%.
Like Billy Crudup is like, yeah, a weird place in your career, kid. And she's like,
whippersnapper.
And I'm like, you are both the same age. You are both 52. Like, what is...
It's like the show takes place in like 4 different universes, and I love all of them. But I mean, Reese Witherspoon is operating at an 11. And yes, the idea that she's screaming in most every episode, lots of histrionics.
My favorite line reading in that first episode was good old, I love her, where there's an open invitation to be on the show at any point, but it was good old Brett Butler screaming, I'm gonna have to move away from the mic, "You ruined dinner!" And I was like, wow, that is very cool.
You completely reminded me that Brett Butler was in it, and I screamed at the television when Hannah and I were watching it because I thought nobody thought to tell me that Brett Butler was in this show.
I have to say, like seeing Brett Butler up here, it's like, okay, sure, there's Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston, but it's like, it's the appearance of Brett Butler, it's the appearance of Gugu Mbatha-Raw, who's like much better than the material is demanding of her. Karen Pittman, who's like doing heavy lifting, has a lot of internal life. Like, these are people who are showing up and I feel like are adding color to what would be it could be a very terrible show otherwise. Yes,
completely agree. I mean, I have to say the whole thing was a wild ride, but I loved every second of it. It is alternately really thrilling, really off the wall, then sometimes boring, and then there's musical numbers. So I can't recommend it highly enough.
Oh, I didn't get to a musical number, but I'm excited.
I'm so glad you finally watched it. I don't think I can compare it to anything I've ever seen on television before. And I will just say that it gets even crazier, even battier with season 2. Speaking of Karen Pittman, I just want to say that, like, if you're not caught up on In Just Like That, or if you think you have no interest, you should watch In Just Like That. It's going to be worth your while.
I also watched How I Met Your Father because, and we did get a text message from a listener and friend, Naomi, that was like, is anyone putting their money where their mouth is with Kim Cattrall support? And I was like, I already watched the first 2 episodes. Thank you very much. It's quite a shame that this is I don't want to say it's quite a shame. It's perfectly watchable television. It's just like, Kim is better than the show. And so is Hilary Duff, and, but it is what it is. She's like in a George Jetson like setting. It's like takes place in like 20 22 50, and she comes out and it's like she's in like a space house and she's like, hello, call son room, and she's like, want to hear the story of how I met your father? And I was like, this is the show? And then it flashes back to present day where Hilary Duff is Kim Cattrall.
Yet again, no one told me that it took place in the future, so what you just said is enough for me to watch the entire series if I know that it's taking place with Kim Cattrall in the future. Also, the idea that like the future looks the same in 2050 as it did in like the 1980s when Back to the Future 2 was predicting what the future looked like. We're still in the same category of like TV dinners and TV's talking to us. So thank God. I love Kim Cattrall. She's in New York City right now, I saw based on her Twitter. So I'm just hoping that we run into her. I will say it is a real thrill to see what I'm calling a golden age of like actresses on television, so that we have lots of women that we love in lots of.
That's true.
Some prestige, you know, it's like I'm getting to see a lot of women that I love on a lot of TV every week, and that is a thrill for me. So please let us know if you're watching these shows. We want to hear from you. Like, what are the things that we're missing? Are we missing anything? I don't think we are, but if we are, let us know.
Well, speaking of shows full of women, we are just so delighted for this week's guest. It was such a thrill to talk to Rachel Shelley about her entire oeuvre and, of course, get all of that juicy L-word tea, because you know that we are nothing if not but consistent, and we love the L-word here at You Might Know Her From.
You might know her from The L Word,
Deep State,
Rogue,
The Ghost Whisperer,
Once Upon a Time,
Casualty,
and Lagaan, Once Upon a Time in India.
Welcome back. We are just so thrilled to be joined by actress Rachel Shelley. Rachel, thank you for being on the show with us today.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Very pleased to be here. Very pleased.
Okay, so for our listeners, we really need to offer context. Right now, you're in the UK on UK time, a first for this show, and you work really consistently between LA and England. Can you talk to us about like how you find that balance between being in London, where I believe you're based, and then being in the States for whenever there's work? Like, how do you make those decisions about when you're going to come to LA? Like, do you come for pilot season? Or are you like, I'm in London, but I'll come to LA for the work? Like, how do you make those decisions for you and your family and your life?
Well, to be honest, in the last however many years, 5 years, I don't think I've been to LA.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, the pandemic obviously is one thing. I can't even imagine how that process would go now in the pandemic and everything that needs to be done just to fly and just to be there. Also, my daughter, she's 12 years old. I'm not moving her in and out of school anymore. When she was preschool, we used to come and go as a family quite a lot, and it worked well. My husband is also in the film industry. He's a writer, director, showrunner. So we would be going back and forth between LA, but a lot of the time in Canada. But now, you know, I won't be away from her. I'm not about to pull her out of school. So I feel like I'm London based now. I probably shouldn't be saying that. But it's true. It's true.
So we're excited to sort of dive into your body of work. And one of the exciting things was finding the movie Lagaan. This is the movie you starred opposite Amir Khan. It's Oscar nominated. It was an Indian Hindi epic saga from 2001. The movie's like 3 hours and 45 minutes. It's this enormous cast filmed on location in India. So were you familiar with sort of the Bollywood industry? And can you talk about how grueling those long days in the desert were? You were in like huge full period dress the entire time.
Exactly. It's set in the Victorian era. And yes, I was familiar with India. I'd been traveling in India just the year before with friends. A big group of us had gone backpacking around India. But I wasn't familiar at all with Bollywood, only the pictures that maybe I had seen on posters. Or I knew nothing about that world. And the audition came in. And for me then, gosh, how old was I? Late 20s. I was just really keen to go back to India. And I just thought, wow, what an adventure. And although I've said this before, it stands true that my agent at the time said, you could do this film. You'll never hear about it again. And I was like, well, maybe, but look, it's how can I not go for this? It just seems like such an adventure. And the script is great, so I'd love to. And then, of course, it becomes the biggest film I've ever done. It's nominated for an Oscar. It's one of those experiences. I was talking to someone just the other day about it. I think it's 20 years now that since its release, and we filmed in 2000. And it's kind of become embedded in who I am, if you see what I mean. The threads of it run all the way through my life. And I never knew it would be like that when I got the job. and went to India. But it is because we have these annual sort of get-togethers or conversations, or at least online, you know, between everyone who was involved. And this year we had a huge Zoom call with, gosh, I don't know, 100 people all coming together from all over the world who worked on the film. You know, it's gone on and continued, and it's embedded in everything. And as I sit here in my house, you know, I have Indian garments that I bought in Gujarat. That's where we filmed, and what's famous for, you know, its beautiful materials. And it's just, but basically it just runs through my life now. You know, it's always there. It was grueling. It was very grueling. It was the desert. It had to be the desert because it's set in a drought time. I'm in big costumes. I'm in a corset and, you know, petticoats, and all very hot. And, you know, there were times when everyone got ill, myself included. It was, you know, Delhi belly struck us all. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. I was there for 4 months. It's interesting why you take a role, and that role was, I love the script, but I just want to get back out to India. I want to have this experience. How amazing. I don't care if I never hear about it again. And then you follow what I guess is your heart in that situation, and it's a positive, you know, it becomes this huge part of my life and a huge part of my career. So
yeah, the movie is a total pleasure. It's streaming on Netflix, and the joy of it is that it's like all of these genres, sort of like for American audiences. It is like a sports movie, a musical, a comedy, and also this like epic, you know, sprawling movie. And anyway, I had a great time watching it, so highly recommend.
Two of your most recent high-profile credits include the British TV series Deep State that aired on the US on Epix, and Rogue with Tandy Newton. And both of these series were created by your real-life partner, who you mentioned before, Matthew Park-Hill.
Yeah.
What has that experience been like to work alongside your partner in a creative space? Like, do y'all bring home, like, espionage talk? Or do you, like, do you leave it at set? Or are you like, this is off, like, we're not doing this at dinner?
It's varied. It's really varied. When Matthew started, Rogue was the first one. When he started on that, we were out together in Canada as a family, and every step of the way I was with him on the first season of what was happening and who said what and when they did it and how that developed. And you know, because it's such a complicated animal, a show like that, there's so many people involved, so many moving parts, and so many discussions. I mean, there's no way I could do what he does. It's just so complicated, and I wouldn't have the calmness to move through all these problems one after the other, or issues, you know, things that have to be resolved. So in those first seasons, yes, I would know every step of the way. But in later seasons, I guess as Matthew became more familiar with what he was doing, we didn't discuss it so much because he learned that he had to keep it at work. Otherwise, he would go a bit crazy if you just, you know, you have to detach at some point. My involvement in those shows was, I loved my roles in them, but they weren't, you know, they weren't lead roles in there, supporting roles. So I was able to sort of have a fair amount of distance from all of that as it was ongoing. And now in Deep State, which had its second season, again, it was a similar thing. Matthew never directed me on set, interestingly. And I think that's probably no bad thing, because I think there's a lot of couples where one person is the actor and they have to do self-tapes. Woo, you know? It's not always the prettiest time in your relationship as a couple, I think. I hear that a lot. For us, definitely. I get a bit defensive. He gets a bit strict, and well, that's what I think. And you know, it's not the best. It's not the best time.
Okay, Rachel, you star in one of our favorite shows of all time, the original, The L Word. So please bear with us because we have quite a lot to get into. So a little bit of background for our listeners. You played Helena Peabody, the rich heiress and daughter of Peggy Peabody. And you've said in the past that the character breakdown for Helena read as follows. It's a lot, so let's get into it. Katharine Hepburn style by way of $5,000 worth of man-styled couture. Relaxed with a supremely enfranchised bearing, stunningly beautiful, a bare suggestion of earthy butch equanimity. Unself-consciously sensuous with a killer smile, gorgeous and icy, we're struck by her presence and beauty. Every move and exchange only serves to underscore Helena's power. Jesus Christ. Did you feel overwhelmed by the emphasis like on the character's looks? What the fuck do you do to try to capture that like monologue of a breakdown? And did it ever explicitly say that like she had a British accent? Like tell us what you did with that breakdown.
Yeah, it was a very interesting process. They were trying to cast Helena Peabody for quite a while. I'd heard about it and it was there and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't get called in for a while. I wasn't on the radar. And then I was back in London and I got that breakdown and I put myself on tape, not with my husband, with a friend. And we did it one Saturday morning. And I always remember this because we were both a little bit hungover. And we just did it. We just kind of like banged it out. And I probably stressed over it very little. I was very interested in doing it, but it was just, it had to be delivered on a certain day. So we did it in a we just got it done, played around with it. It was fun. And then I don't think I heard anything for a week or so. And then I got called in again by a casting director in London. So I went in again and probably did a very different reading, I imagine, because it was a different setup. It was in somebody's office. I went in. I was, I wasn't hungover. I was icy, sort of cool with it. I, to this day, don't know which one they saw, whether they saw both. I don't know. I don't know what led to then being asked to come to America to test. I don't know. I think, especially then, I don't know whether breakdowns work that way so much now. I don't think people talk about the way someone looks quite as much. I don't think they're kind of not allowed to, but I think, I think it's frowned upon a bit more. Do you think? I mean, I don't know. I would say that
there's just more of an awareness maybe of like how that comes across.
Yes, how that comes across. I mean, I get it, and I get the idea of, sort of an element of masculinity to her character. They knew what they were looking for. They were obviously struggling to find it. The English accent thing was just, I did it both ways. I did it in an English accent and American accent. And even, I didn't know what I was going to be reading in until they called me to test. And I don't remember if I did it in American. I don't think I did. I think I just did it in English. And maybe that's what they wanted. I think they quite liked the accent, the sort of, and it has that entitlement, especially in that era, to an American audience, British accent. My accent, by the way, isn't very posh, but I think for a lot of Americans, it probably sounds that way.
We think the Spice Girls are posh over here. You know what I mean? Like we think like...
Yeah, exactly. So... yeah, that sort of entitlement often, I think then especially, I can't remember what other characters were around, but there were lots of English characters who were kind of playing the baddies, Mm-hmm. So I think it kind of gave the character that edge just without even, just the first word. It gave a sort of slight frostiness, which was interesting. And they went with it and they explained it as I went to school in England, to a boarding school, and my mother, I have loads of friends whose parents and children have completely different accents, but it seemed to be a problem for some of the viewers. I don't know why, but anyway.
So your character is introduced as an antagonist for Jennifer Beals' Bet, but then you end up actually dating Tina while she and Bet are broken up. So despite this, Helena eventually just becomes part of the crew. Was that a strange thing to maneuver as an actor, since she sort of changed sort of drastically from the way she was sort of initially to who she became then?
Well, I think in any long-running TV show, I don't know. Yes, between seasons, Helena changed fair amount over those 5 seasons. She really did. But she had big things happen to her. She was disinherited and, you know, she got kicked around by the love of her life and all, you know. But yes, she mellowed. I would say she mellowed. And I think they sort of explain that with taking away her money, which I think is that entitlement that she always threw around, that she could do anything she wanted because she was loaded. And, you know, if that's taken away, it's not surprising that she would sort of be a bit lower in power and, you know, just a bit more vulnerable and behave differently.
And I think for context, it's like you are one of the only, I would say you're the only addition to the show. And you did come on in season 2, but you're like the only addition to the show that felt like still part of the core original group. So that by the end, it was like, oh, Helena's been there since the beginning, even though you hadn't been. And the show, okay. I don't think the show successfully did that with any other cast member addition. So I feel like it's probably to your credit that like you brought something to it that they were excited to sort of write in because it felt much more organic than a lot of some of the other people they tried to shoehorn in.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting you say that. I think the first season, there was definitely I can't remember Helena having much in the way of any kind of comedy or levity. There was no sort of sparring or banter. And I think I can't remember now when we started doing a bit of that, but it was quite interesting. And I remember going, oh, this is great. Now they're writing some of this light stuff for me to do. And it is and it's fun and it's funny. And I'm, you know, being sort of getting more involved in, as I used to see it, I used to see that there was the Bet and Tina, the sort of older women. And then the youngsters were, you know, Jenny and Shane and Alice, and I sort of sometimes went between the two a bit and did a bit of comedy over there and a bit of my serious drama over here. So it definitely evolved. You know, my character evolved, and I loved it. I loved playing all those different strands to her. It was great.
Helena has said that Alice was like her first real friend, but who was your Alice on the set? Like, who was your go-to person?
Oh, on the set? You mean off? Probably Laurel, who played Tina, because from the beginning, you know, she was my scene partner who continued throughout. When she was there, Alexandra Hedison, who played Dylan, you know, and I'm still friends with her and, you know, I see her when I can, but, you know, we live in different places and nobody's traveling much anymore. But Laurel, and Alexandra Hedison.
The great Holland Taylor played your mother, Peggy Peabody on the series. And this was before she publicly came out, though it seemed like it was sort of an open secret, like it was almost a wink to the audience. How close did you two get in playing like mother-daughter? Like, did she regale you with any amazing stories of her like decades-long career in the industry? Yeah,
she was great. She is great. I mean, gosh, she's brilliant.
Truly, it's like such a coup that the show had her.
Yeah, I know. Everyone used to get excited but when we knew she was coming, you know, because she was there in the first season. So everyone knew her kind of before I knew her, really. But everyone would get excited when she was in a script and it was like, oh! And everyone would try and have dinner with her and, you know, hang out with her. She was great. She's got, you know, so many stories and so much energy. And she would just come in every time, knock it out the park, surprise us all, keep us all on our toes and just be, just great. And I don't know, I'm not sure if she knew some of the producers or showrunners. I don't know whether she actually knew them personally, but it felt like she really had a home there. And it felt that she loved coming and doing those scenes. She'd come and go. And because usually when an actor comes into town for something like that, for a season like that, they try and cram, obviously, as much of their work into a short period of time. So although she featured, I imagine, every season, she probably wouldn't be there for that long. You know, she would come and go and disappear just because that's what they do. Like if they, you know, she might have 3 scenes, but they'll try and do them all on one day if they can. So she might not be there for very long. But no, always fun. Always great fun.
So part of being on a show like The L Word and that is like soapy and sexy is like having to fuck multiple people on the show. So like who was your favorite fuck on the show? You have like Tina, Poppy, Don Denbo's lover, Cindy, Dusty, Catherine, Dylan. Like, who was the person that you were like had the most fun with?
Gosh, I feel like I'm telling tales out of school. It's like, how can I tell you which of my children I prefer? It's
well,
I don't. Did I fuck Dawn? Who
No, her lover Cindy.
Oh,
Don
okay.
Denbo's lover Cindy.
She's your date, I think, to the Lay Girl premiere or something.
But I didn't. We never had a scene. I don't.
No, there was no scene.
Right, it's just implied. It's implied.
It's implied. Okay, I'm glad you're reminding me. You've got the show notes. The person, again, Alexandra Hedison, I feel like we always worked really well together. And I guess because with Laurel, we had those scenes at the beginning, my first season, and then, that never happened again. We had different types of scenes. Whereas with Alexandra, we had lots of, every time she was there, it was intense. There was lots of scenes, lots of drama. And we would get on really well and just talk, and we'd play tennis, and we'd hang out, which was great. So I think across probably Alexandra was always there because she was that through line that continued throughout. Yeah.
Okay, so on the show, your ex-wife Winnie is played by Oscar winner Melissa Leo.
Yes.
And then you also have this, as we mentioned, like this sprawling relationship with Dylan, played by actor-photographer, a main gay icon, basically, Alexandra Hedison. Were you intimidated to work with either of them because they each have some sort of like gravitas to them in a different way? Or were they just pals on set?
Alexandra was, for me, never intimidating, ever. She's such a lovely person. She's so warm. She is so trusting as well. And so she makes herself vulnerable in a scene in a way that allows you to make yourself vulnerable. It always felt very safe when she and I worked together, looking after each other, not just in a sort of emotional person-to-person way, but within the scene. You're not going to let anyone mess up. We're helping make the scene better. There was no conflict of power between actors, which it does happen sometimes. Never with Alexandra. It was very supportive in that way. Melissa Leo, I was a bit intimidated of her. I have to say, she hadn't won the Oscar when she first came in. She didn't want to. I don't think she came in wanting to intimidate, but her scenes, especially her first scene, was so powerful. I remember her strutting around this room, laying into me. And I remember going, oh my God, I actually am a little bit. But of course, my character wasn't supposed to be that way. My character's supposed to just slam it back to her. So, there was an element of, oh my God, she really is. She's making me feel uncomfortable, but I have to step up now and give it back. Melissa never really returned after that. I guess, I can't remember. You probably know the timing better when she won the Oscar. Maybe she never came back. I don't
think she came back after she won the Oscar.
I don't think so, but like Winnie Mann is referenced, I think, a few times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Such a great character name.
Yeah, such a great character. And, but it used to be a bit of a joke that we used to laugh about, my children. Where did they get to? I remember it used to be Alice quite often would say things like, whatever happened to her children? Where are her? It's just funny.
It's the convenience of being on a soap opera.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That they're. Do you think it's a soap opera? Is that how you?
I think it's soapy. No, it's not a soap opera in standard sense. It's a soapy, like hour-long drama, which is my favorite kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's the elements of that, yeah.
So, diving back into L Word research, it's great to be reminded that Helena, of course, went to prison. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you remember that, getting that script? And also, like, why'd you do Dusty so dirty? We loved Dusty. Dusty could have been a good option for you.
It's interesting. I think, as I remember it, at the end of most seasons...
I totally forgot about this plot point, by the way.
At the end of most seasons, you kind of wonder what's going to happen, I think. It's interesting what we were saying before about, as a viewer, you considered Helena becoming like, oh, was she not there at the beginning? I think I always felt slightly on the edge of that core group. I never felt like I was there. I never kind of forgot that I wasn't there at the beginning. And I think every year I would have this sense of, oh, am I coming back next year? Because characters are, you know, for whatever reasons, there's a whole host of reasons. Sometimes they just feel like your story can't change anymore. It's, you know, haven't got anywhere further to go. Sometimes it's about another character, an actress who can't return. So what are they going to do with your character? There's so many different reasons why a character might not come back. But I would most years be like, what's going to happen? And I can remember having a conversation with Eileen Chaikin about the next year. And I was really keen for there to be prison in the L Word. Because there used to be a big, I'm not going to remember, what, prisoner cell block H, I think it was, which is a big Australian,
like women's prison.
Yeah.
The sort of genre of like lesbians in women's prison.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I thought there was obviously a whole mine of characters and storylines to tell there. So I was keen for that to come back. And this was before Orange is the New Black, obviously, and before Leisha Haley was in the kind of spin-off, The Farm.
Oh, yes, we have to discuss it.
Which I don't know anything about that. I've never seen it. But
why? Where is The Farm? Why we need to see it?
Somebody give me the Vimeo protected link, please.
I know. It would be really fascinating to see that. I mean, there were lots of actors in that. It was
Melissa Leo
came back in a different role.
Yeah.
And Laurie Metcalf is in it, I believe.
Oh, really?
It's very interesting. I'd love to see it.
I'd love to see it. And I mean, I was never surprised that there was a spin-off and that Leisha was it. I always used to think, and again, with my slightly outsider hat on, because like I say, I always sort of saw myself as someone who came to join. I always thought that it would be Leisha who would go on to have the spin-off, you know, because she can do the drama, she can do the comedy, and she was an out actress, and it just seemed like the right way to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the prison thing, I was really keen to be telling prison stories. I really enjoyed doing it. I'm not sure that we really got into the heart of what prison life is like. I've not seen The Farm, but I didn't feel like we really got in there, really.
Right, because the comedy was sort of in you being a fish out of water.
Yeah. It was, and I think the comedy was shown more than the dark side of it. Whatever. Maybe that just worked better at the time. I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay, Rachel, Shelley, very important question. Why is the L Word obsessed with death? They killed Dana, then they killed Jenny, then they've killed Kit in the reboot. Like, why is it obsessed with death? How did it feel when that sixth season became a murder mystery? That was
a very strange. There are so many tales to tell about that, but they're not my stories to tell, unfortunately. That was an interesting. I can always remember sitting in the makeup room, on the makeup truck, looking through a new script, and it was always like when the new scripts came out, everyone was like, everyone's reading it. Where are my scenes? What's happening? What are you doing? And reading it. And reading this line where I say, I could fucking kill you, Jenny. And going, and something just dropped. And I was like, we're all saying at some point, I could kill that Jenny Schecter. and I was like, hang on, everyone said it. This isn't by act. This isn't like, because we didn't know when we were shooting that she was going to be dead until further into shooting, if you see what I mean. We didn't know. Yeah. We didn't know what was going on.
I did not know that. Laurel Holloman did not share that with us, I don't think. Wow. Did you know that, Ian? I did not know that.
I don't think we knew that. Also, it's like, but like you're picking up on all the classic mystery clues.
It's like a whodunit, but we didn't even know that something had been done.
Oh, wow.
I probably shouldn't have said that.
No. Rachel, it's 20 years old. This needed to come out.
Exactly. I know.
This is before Lucy Lawless showed up to set to start interrogating.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I do love it, though. I do love it.
And there were discussions around how that season was going to be promoted. And because I think the idea was, my understanding, could be wrong, my understanding was that they wanted to make this last season a standalone season. So if you'd never watched the L Word, you could watch it then, because it would be, here are all these characters who are fully fledged, fully formed. They have a whole intersecting life. It's all there. This is the murder mystery around it. That was my understanding, that was the pitch for season 6.
What a bold choice. It really is one of my favorite swerves of any like long-running TV show. It's just a total surprise. And honestly, it's like one of my favorite seasons because it is just so strange to watch it happen to this particular show.
Yeah. You wouldn't have thought that for that show. Exactly.
Yeah. They're giving like Big Little Lies energy like 15 years earlier. Yeah.
But maybe it was a note that was sent down. For all we know, it could have been a note that came down from the powers that be. This is what we're going for this year across our shows. So this is what we need. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Eileen has said like, she's said like she's maybe not the most proud of that choice. Okay, so as we all know, the show got rebooted with the L Word Generation Q.
Yeah.
Did you watch
any? I watched, I went to a screening that Diva Magazine, who I work with a lot here in the UK, I went to a screening for the first couple of episodes. It was pretty hard to hear anything when you go to one of those screenings. So it's, people are loud and there's a lot, but it looked amazing. I thought it all looked amazing.
But here's the thing. We were like convinced that you were going to return to the show because it makes sense the way that they've set up Shane to have this poker game. It's like, great, Helena can bankroll this. Let's bring Helena back in. Has there been any talks to have you back on the show? I feel like we have a whole vision about how to get you back in.
No, it's interesting. When I look on Twitter, which is certainly not a trustworthy source of any information, but, people seem to be, every now and then I get a barrage, something's happened, something that I don't know anything about, or I have, no one's, and there's like, oh, Helena Peabody's coming back. No, I don't think so. No one's ever reached out to me. I interviewed Eileen Chaikin for Diva Magazine. Gosh, I think it was it last year or the year before? I can't remember now. It's all a bit blurry, isn't it, with the pandemic? But I interviewed her and she was like, we'd love to have you back. I don't know.
Okay, well, she needs to make good on that.
No, but you see, this is what I'm talking about. It's not always, if you're talking in an industry way, it's not as simple as that. I don't know exactly what Eileen's role is. She's there on the show, but she's not show running.
Right.
And there's so many producers. There's a lot, how could I have been flown out there this year anyway?
Right.
Impossible. For quarantine, there was something else that I was in talks with someone about. I would have had to have sat there for maybe a week in a hotel before I could have even started filming. And things were getting shut down all the time. I could have been out there for 2 months and done 3 days shooting,
Right.
Yeah.
It's difficult. But anyway, no. It's
right. Well, we're keeping our fingers crossed for season 3 if it happens.
It'd be great. It would be great.
So, as you just mentioned, you have a relationship with Diva Magazine. You've appeared on their queer series, Different for Girls, with fellow L Word alumna and former guest of this show, Guinevere Turner.
Yeah.
And you're now producing and hosting their podcast, Pod Diva, for the brand.
Yes.
How did your collaboration with this queer media platform come about? Like, is it just due to your sort of honorary lesbian status thanks to the L Word?
Yes, I think many years ago I did a cover shoot for them when I was playing Helena. So I did the cover shoot and was interviewed by their then editor, Jane Schecter. And we got on very well. We sat around, we had coffee, we were chatting a lot. And they used to have quite a turnover of columnists that would come in and do a monthly piece for them. She asked me if I'd be interested. Now, I've always done a lot of journalism. At university, I did English and drama. So I've always had this journalistic streak. I've done things for Elle magazine and The Guardian and various different publications that I've done. So it just seemed like a natural fit to write that. And obviously I wasn't sort of pretending to be gay or anything. I was just like, if you think your readers will want to hear from me, then yeah, I'd love to do that. And that just developed and, and then I wrote articles and I did interviews with actors from the L Word, but from lots of other people as well. And then I have always been interested in radio. So I did an MA maybe 5-6 years ago. I did an MA at Goldsmiths University here in London on radio production. And so now I'm also making documentaries. I did a documentary earlier this year for BBC Radio 4, which was on grief, which is maybe not quite the topic that most podcasts are interested in, but it was a very heartfelt, very personal piece that I made. I love radio. I love making pods and podcasts. I also, I'm sure you guys know Pants, so I set that up. Initially, I started that with Kate and Leisha. Having interviewed them for Radio Diva, I realized that they're just like, they're podcast gold. They really are. Yeah, so Pod Diva was just, I thought, a natural footing for Diva magazine, and it goes hand in hand with the magazine. Every month, myself and another actor, Victoria Broom, who was in Different for Girls, we sort of talk through the magazine. We have features. I make standalone features, try and make them more creative, like soundscapes, not just talking voices, to really try and mold them and craft something a bit more interesting, but also to go through the magazine and talk about topics that are mentioned there, issues. And then the other weeks of the month, sort of interviews between some of the Diva staff writers that they undertake the interviews for the magazine. So it varies. The subjects are different. It's quite a varied podcast. It's not the same format every week.
Rachel, Shelley, we've entered the part of the show that we like to call the rapid fire.
Okay.
We're just going to get in all of the other things that we didn't get in before. Take as much time as you need. It's rapid for us, rapid for you if you want it to
be.
Okay. You said that when you moved to Vancouver to shoot the L Word, you bumped into John Voight in an elevator and asked if he remembered you from when you two starred in Jack and the Beanstalk, the miniseries. Did he really remember you? And was he wearing the signature white scarf when you saw him?
I don't know if he was wearing a signature white scarf, but whether he remembered me, he remembered the scene and he did all the lines.
That is wild.
He did the script.
That's cool.
Very cool. Surreal. Really quite surreal. It's 3:00 in the morning or something in a lift. So surreal. I couldn't remember the lines. That's why I was so sort of like, wow, you're right.
Right. Maybe he's a savant. What's happening there?
Crazy.
In the indie comedy Grey Matters, you woo a newly out lesbian, Grey, played by Heather Graham, in a fedora. You, of course, also fuck the famous fedora-wearing Poppy on the L Word. Rachel Shelley, you are not a lesbian, but you've worked on many lesbian projects. What is it about fedoras that have costume designers saying yes?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't think I'd know a fedora if it fell on me. So if you say that's what happened, I just accept it. Okay, yeah. I don't know. Hats. It's a hat.
Yeah, learn what a fedora looks like. That way, if it does fall on you, you can run the other way. You don't want it falling on your head.
I don't know. I don't know what it is about fedoras.
You played Jay Moore's dead wife in a few episodes of the Jennifer Love Hewitt series, The Ghost Whisperer. You are, of course, a ghost. You are also sort of a ghost in the film Photographing Fairies, co-starring Ben Kingsley. And so, when you're playing a ghost, do you do research? Do you play them like they're alive? Do you just wing it? What tips do you have for playing a phantom? I can tell you that on Ghost Whisperer, they had a ghost Bible, which is... you have show Bibles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which tells you everything about this show. Like, so-and-so was born there, raised there. It tells you everything. This is what we do. They had a ghost Bible. One of them was, I don't know why I remember this one, it's the only one I remember, that their hair doesn't move.
Wow.
What the hell?
I don't know why, but their hair doesn't move. That's what I remember. Maybe they told me that to stop flicking it. Maybe it's rubbish. I just remember going, wow, that's interesting. Why does my hair not
That
move?
is specific.
But yeah, quite interesting playing ghosts. I think with the Ghost Whisperer, just a normal character. And with, God, photographing fairies so long ago. But I only played snippets of a ghost there. You know,
Right.
It was just in moments, appearances, whispers, and God, I can't remember about anything about preparation for that character at all. I know I loved it.
Did your hair move then?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, it moved.
Thank you for that tidbit. That is good intel.
You star in Everybody Loves Sunshine, aka Busted, about a feud between street gangs that co-stars David Bowie, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get any time to hang out with Sir Bowie on set? Like, did you have moments with him?
Yes, I did. And David Bowie was my poster boy when I was a kid. I always had posters of him on my wall, and that was one of the highlights, I think, of my career, of meeting people. It was heart-stopping for me when he came on and introduced himself. I was really like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He couldn't have been nicer, a gentleman. He came up, introduced himself to everyone on set. I got to sit with him in the back of this old Jaguar and another actor, and he sat in the middle of us, and he would sing to himself, and he was telling jokes about Mick Jagger and telling stories. He was beautiful all the way through, that man. And
Yeah.
I still get really upset sometimes when I just hear his music, and that, you know. Anyway, that was absolute highlight of people that I've met and worked with. He's up there.
Yeah.
So, in 2012, you joined the long-running British hospital drama Casualty as a police officer, Yvonne. And she was mistaken for a rioter and stabbed. Then you fall backwards down a flight of stairs and suffer a fatal spinal injury, in addition to the stab wound. How wild was it to join a show in its 26th season, and how difficult was it to die on camera?
Oh my God, that show, it's amazing. It's so successful over here. It's a machine. They are shooting 3 units at any one time, working on different stories.
Wow.
And when you get swept up into it, not that I had to do that a lot, but some of them are doing it all the time. They're going from that unit, then over there, and you go into that story, and then you go over there, and you go into that story. I didn't have too much of that, but it's full on. It was really full on. There was almost no rehearsal. The people who do that brilliantly are brilliant, because they hit the ground running every time, and they nail it, and they are, for me, it was quite a shock coming from the shows that I've done where you get a moment, you know, you can block it, you talk about it, you maybe rehearse it, you've met the actors before, you've gone through it. This was just like, okay, what you got? Great, move on. Oh, I felt like I was dying every day on that when I was doing that. I was like, what? Have we finished? Oh my God. So that was a journey, that one. Mm-hmm. And I can remember, no, I'm not going to tell that story. It was amazing. It was all great.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're glad you survived it. Rachel Shelley, thank you so much for joining us on You Might Know Her From today. This has been such a joy.
Thank you so much. I've had a real pleasure and quite a laugh, actually. Looking back, it's almost like a this is your life thing, which was in your work, which is a bit like, hang on, I'm not that old, am I? But anyway, yes, that was great. Thank you, guys. That was really good fun.
Here's the thing. We will pay you for the farm. If you have access to the spin-off of The L Word starring Leisha Haley in prison with Melissa Leo and Laurie Metcalf, we will pay you good money for it. It is extremely important to the two of us. We've been hunting the farm for years now. No one has access. What can we do? Who's got the goods? Come at us.
Do you remember when we first met Anne? I think I had stopped already, but I was working at a voiceover agency as like in their VO booth. And we had an actor, Yolanda Ross. Shout out to Yolanda Ross. You're welcome on the show anytime. But I watched her reel and she was in the farm. And I remember like telling you, like I saw footage of it in Yolanda's reel. And I Facebook messaged her, like I probably to charm you in our friendship, and was like, hey, Yolanda, just wondering if you have access to the farm. I want to watch it. And she was like, no, I don't. And I was like, cool, thanks so much. So I just wanted to remind you that I am ill. And also, we really do need to. We've been trying on the hunt since like 2010, man.
You would do anything for love, and I love you for that. It's why I love you so much. It's why we are best friends. It's why we do what we do, and we will get it. I do feel convinced that in this lifetime, before one or both of us dies, we will have access to the farm.
If I die beforehand, please screen it at my funeral.
Obviously, I'll use your death as
Shaken
like, motivation to be like, look, my best friend died. It was his dying wish to see the farm. Eileen Shaken, what can you do? Maybe then she'll take our calls. Folks, oh man, Rachel Shelley was a delight. Also, the intel that we got about her accent work and how Americans think that any British person is posh really was delightful and so true. It really is. Like, she came off so fancy to me on the L Word, and then I realized, oh.
I have to say one of my favorite parts of the interview was talking to Rachel Shelley about fedoras and talking to her about how she had to like act opposite a lesbian play-in Heather Graham wearing a fucking fedora. And I'm going to share this on my Instagram. So this is a promise to do this. There's a scene from that movie Grey Matters where Heather Graham is like dancing with Brigitte Moynihan. Speaking of And Just Like That, because they are like have a romance. It is a wild ride, but thank God that Rachel Shelley, gay icon, shows up in the latter half of the film. Also, we didn't get a chance to talk about this for time, but I have to put this out there. Rachel Shelley plays Rumpelstiltskin's wife on Once Upon a Time. It is a real loss. Rachel, I'm not mad. I know you had to go, but it was in my list of questions. Of course, Rachel Shelley played Rumpelstiltskin's wife, but of course she was also in love with Captain Hook. That show was wild. The question, obviously, was if you had a good son, Captain Hook and Rumpelstiltskin, which one would you have chosen? So we didn't get to ask her that very important question, but I just wanted all the Once Upon a Time fans to know that it was in the notes. It was in the notes. I have a soft spot for Rumpel.
We both do. We both love Rumpelstiltskin. I was a very big fan of the Amy Irving Rumpelstiltskin. So thank God that we got to talk to Rachel Shelley. Maybe that we'll have a part 2 just to cover those bases. But honestly, I really was into Lagaan, the Bollywood film that is on Netflix. Highly recommend you go watch it. Also, we're going to put in the show notes, which I spend a lot of time on, folks, her audition, which she auditioned for this Bollywood film with The Sound of Music in the room. So we will be putting that in the show notes if you have been waiting your whole life to hear Rachel Shelley sing. Don't worry. Go to the bottom of the episode description. That's where you'll find it.
Okay, so folks, you know what time it is. This is a part of the show where we connect this week's guest, Rachel Shelley, to next week's guest in a blind item sort of situation using only actresses that they have all worked together. So this is a 6 degrees of actresses to get from Rachel to next week's mystery guest. Anne, can you take it away for me?
Here we go, baby. Drum roll, please. Rachel Shelley was in The Ghost Whisperer with Jennifer Love Hewitt, who was in I Know What You Did Last Summer 2, a movie I love, with Brandy, who was in the live-action Disney Cinderella with former guest of this show, V. Ann Cox, love her, who was in Marcy X with Lisa Kudrow, who was in Hanging Up with beloved Diane Keaton, who was in Marvin's Room with Cynthia Nixon in a small role, who is on In Just Like That, of course, with next week's guest. We told you to watch In Just Like That, and we're telling you again, go watch In Just Like That. Folks, if you like what we're putting down here on You Might Know Her From, would you do us the favor of leaving us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast app? That's the best thing you can do to boost us up in that algorithm, get us in front of people's eyeballs and in their ear holes. It would be so kind. Words, 5 stars, an emoji, a guest that you loved, a guest you'd love to have. All of that would be so choice. Thank you so much.
And while you're there, online or on your phone, folks, why don't you do us the great honor of following us on social media? You can find me everywhere at Damian Bellino, and you can find my cohort Anne Rodeman at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE.
Know Her From is produced by us. That's Damian Bellino and Ann Rodeman. Special thanks to our beautiful consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That's Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. And special thanks, as always, to our editor at large. That is Mr. Daniel Sears.
Special thanks to Gang. All that music you hear underscoring each and every episode is by Gang. You can download and stream Gang wherever you listen to your music. When you die and I screen the farm at your funeral, will you come down and watch? And when you come down to watch as a ghost, will your hair move or will your hair be still?
It will obviously be still. I follow the rules of the Ghost Bible according to the Ghost Whisperer. That was one of the best things we've ever learned. Ever.
I could not believe it.
Rachel was shocked too. She was distressed.